the rivers historically were seen as a bad area. The rivers, if you're familiar with the Quality Hill neighborhood here in town, I learned it's called Quality Hill because people lived by the river that were poor and needed the river for life support. And once they made enough money, they could move up on the top of the hill and live a higher quality of life. We are trying to bring people back to show people, that the rivers are why Kansas City got its start, is because we were along these major rivers. We need to show them off. You look at a city like Austin, Texas, that has wrapped its arm around its rivers. Same thing with like Oklahoma City as well. People are coming back to the rivers. They're using them. The Kansas River that this bridge sits over is very easygoing. It's great for water recreation. It's not a commercial navigable waterway. There's not big barge traffic, so it's not dangerous to get on a kayak and get out there and get active. Kids can go out on a kayak or a paddleboard and get introduced to water sports. It's really a perfect river for all of this development. And yeah, I mean, this city is long overdue to come back to the rivers. There's Edgar Galicia. He heads the Central Avenue Betterment Association in KCK. He said, we've abandoned our rivers and it's time to come back to the rivers. And that's what we're riding on. We're hoping to bring the attention back down so that people can see them, get active with them, and it'll help clean them up and make them better in the long run.
Hi there. Welcome to the Connecting KC podcast. I'm Rachel Kilmer, also known as Rach the Realtor on the internet, where I love, connecting all things KC. I'm a metro area real estate agent, retired sports reporter, and mom. And probably too old to call myself a TikToker, but honestly, that's how we got here. You can learn more at www.rachtherealtorkc.com. But this show is all about introducing you to all of the movers and shakers, interesting people, heartfelt stories, and funny quirks that make this vibrant community home. So let's get right to it with today's episode of Connecting KC. Welcome into today's episode of Connecting Kansas City, where we are talking about a very hot topic of conversation in Kansas City lately with Jake Fesi. He is the engagement manager for the Rock Island Bridge. He was the first employee hired, so he's been on board for almost a year and oversees event sales, community management, and whatever else he's asked to do. As with any startup, you learn to be a Swiss Army knife where you can. Jake grew up in St. Louis, but has lived in KC for 2.5 years with his beautiful wife and 2 fur children. Jake, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So tell me, what is the latest status here as we're sitting in September? What is the latest with the Rock Island Bridge?
Well, the Rock Island Bridge is a historic project, and with that comes a lot of complexity. So we are currently targeting a spring of 2025 opening. Initially, there were some plans to potentially open this fall, but just like I said, due to the complexity of it, there is a lot of things that need to fall into place for us to really be able to open this correctly. This is 15 years in the making, and to open it in pieces would just not do it justice. So we are excited to open next year for the world's first entertainment district on a bridge over a river.
I love it. So exciting. I have so many logistical questions about this. So starting with like the people, who owns this? Is this owned by the city, or is this a private entity, or who's in charge here?
So that's a very good question that did not always have a very straight answer. Initially, when the project began, the city of KC owned the bridge, but the entire bridge itself is in the state of Kansas. So KC owned a bridge that wasn't in their state. So our founder and CEO, Mike Zeller, was able to work with both sides, and KC transferred ownership of this bridge to KCK for $1. So now the unified government of Kansas City, Kansas owns the bridge. We lease it from them. We have a 66-year lease on it, so I won't have to renew it anytime soon. We get some pretty good deals on our rent because 65% of the bridge is a park. It is public use space. That's a part of our partnership and agreement with Kansas City, Kansas. We are giving their citizens a new public resource, and we're also going to have the chance to have a really cool restaurant and event space up there as well. So owned by KCK, leased by us.
So I'm a real estate agent is my day job. So my brain immediately goes to, there's no land underneath this bridge. So Has financing been a struggle here when it's not traditional? Like normally it's like, oh, this piece of land, we can obviously assess the value to it and then issue the construction loan based on that. I imagine all of that has been kind of new ground, new territory here, right?
Yeah, it is. That was a very unique aspect of it, is that we had to create land. You always hear people in real estate say the only thing you can't make is more land. We actually made 35,000 square feet of it. They had to create an address for us. There was no address for the space because it was a bridge. But we occupy airspace. So the FAA has to be involved with a lot of these discussions. The Corps of Engineers has to be involved because we touch the levees. The Coast Guard, because we sit over a body of water. So a lot of different organizations in play, but we essentially created new land. And with that, obviously, yes, came its challenges of valuing it. It's increasing in value over time because we're building it and we're, making it something greater than it originally was, while maintaining a lot of the historical pieces of it. We're not trying to put down the history of the bridge. This bridge was incredibly important to the city. It was built to assist in the livestock exchange down in the West Bottoms area to ensure smooth communication and smooth transportation of cattle in between the two sides. So a very important bridge that we definitely want to highlight however we can. But yes, it is new, entirely new land altogether.
That's so interesting. Wow. So then the actual construction side of it is, I'm imagining when you go to an architect that's used to building bridges, they're like, well, wait a minute, the weight and like use is entirely different. How did you kind of form a team of people that were willing to be this creative and take something like this on?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of that happened before I came around. However, our architect was Gould Evans. They're now formerly known as Multi Studio, but it was simply our CEO, Mike, sitting down with them and kind of going back and forth on just ideas and how could we treat a bridge like land. That was, this whole thing was a joke to start. It was Mike riding down the river with his family and friends. And they had a potato gun shooting bridges because when you shoot a potato under a bridge, it makes a really loud noise. So it's kind of fun. They stumble upon this bridge and Mike makes the joke and says, "Ah, man, it's a shame that a bridge like that is going to waste. Somebody ought to buy that bridge and put a chicken shack up there and call it Chicken on a Bridge." And everybody laughed a little bit. It was a joke. And I believe he had relationships with people at Gould Evans, and the joke made it over there. But they kind of sat down and realized that buried inside this joke is the idea that you could treat a bridge like land and create more land on top of it. So they were very creative. I'll also say my brother, Alex Fesi, is a KU architecture graduate now. When he was in college and still studying, Mike actually had him come down into town on some weekends. They would sit down because my brother knew how to use all of the softwares and how to design things. And they made the initial drawings of the bridge. And it's looking back, it's definitely very much different than it ended up being. But it changed a lot. It's two levels in its form now. It's a double-decker bridge. Originally, that was not the plan. It was going to be one level. And then we kind of realized, how could we go vertical and create more space on top of it? Because the bridge itself is, my math may be a little bit off. I believe the bridge structure is about 60 feet tall. So to think, to only have one level on there seems like we got a lot of vertical space we're not using here. So then the idea comes up to go double decker and create a second level on top. Well, what can we do there? Oh, well, the second level could be an event space. We could host private events, weddings, corporate events, and things up there. And you could have a really cool party 60 feet over the river. So it took a lot of time. It took a lot of changes. I mean, it still changes. I mean, it's not as much anymore, but even up until late last year, I mean, we were making adjustments to the design and changing how we wanted to do things. So it was not let's sit down, let's make a plan today and figure this out. It's gone. It's been about 5 years of adjusting the design to get to where we are with our final product.
This might be a dumb question, but is there going to be a capacity limit for like number of bodies that can be on the bridge at a given moment?
Yes. So our capacity is about 1,905 individuals, which actually the bridge was built in 1905. So it's kind of a fun little ode to the origins, but we can fit a lot of people out there. The bridge is 705 feet long, so it's longer than the St. Louis Arch is tall. As a St. Louis native, I always like to throw that one in there. It is incredibly deceivingly long. So with that comes a ton of space because it's about 50 feet wide at its widest point as well. So we can get 1,900 people on the whole bridge. We can get around 400 people on just the top deck alone. So it really is a much more vast space than it appears in the renderings.
Mm-hmm. And what's kind of the breakdown of the use for this? Like how many restaurants, how many bars, what can people expect to have to do when they go visit the bridge?
Yeah, it's changed a lot over time too. Originally, there was this idea to kind of have a food court model and have a couple local restaurants come up there and sell their product out of stations on the main deck. But we came to this realization that we're going to have to close down for 2 months out of the year. There's no part of the bridge where guests will be that is fully indoor climate controlled. It's all open on the sides. Now we have a lot of weather mitigating tools. We have these roll down screens on both sides that they're graded for, I believe, 100-mile-an-hour winds to block down wind. We have gas heaters that are mounted to the ceiling that can warm the space up. You look at temperatures in March and December of this past year, very mild, a lot of 60-degree days. So we feel like we can definitely manage those months. But when it gets down to negative 26 wind chill, there's really nothing we can do. And we learned what happens to beer during the Dolphins game at that temperature. So it's really not an environment that we're going to be wanting people out there anyways. So when we introduced this idea of closing for 2 years, the small business food court model had to be scrapped because to ask a small business to staff it for 10 months, furlough staff for 2 and bring them back was just really too much. So then we kind of created this idea that we're now rolling with, which is the main deck, the northern side of it will be a restaurant. It's going to be a whole new concept. I believe we have a name for it, but I have not been given the green light to tell people what that is. So you'll have to stay tuned. But it's going to be a whole new concept. It's going to be very Kansas City. We are trying to make this bridge as hyper local as we can. That's local beverages from all of your favorite people. You've heard the names, the Boulevards, the J. Riegers, all of those local spots. We would love to have their products up there to be able to sell our food. You know, we're not going to do just barbecue because we know we're not going to be the best barbecue within a 1 mile radius of the bridge. We're not going to do just Mexican because we're not going to be the best Mexican food within a half a mile radius from the bridge. We want to be really good at a decent amount of things and kind of bring the whole culture of this city together in one place and give people a chance to experience that. So that's going to be the restaurant. Now, the rest of the main deck is all public. There is no admission fee to get on the Rock Island Bridge. There is no paying customers only on the Rock Island Bridge. You can bring a book up there on a Saturday, pop down on a bench and read. You do not have to buy anything. It is an open public space. It's not a traditional park because there's not grass on the ground. It is concrete, but it's kind of like a steel park over a river. So that's the rest of the main deck. And then the top deck is your event space. You can get 400 people up there. It's got a 50-foot bar, lots of open space, versatile for a lot of different types of events. And the whole central truss space is covered. You don't have to worry about getting rained on. It's got a roof over it. So it really is going to be an ideal space to be, especially right now when everyone's been experiencing, you know, some intense heat. In the summer months, we are going to be a good place to be because we sit over a river. It's about 15 degrees cooler in the shade on our bridge than on the ground in the sun. So on your hot summer days when it's 90, 95 degrees, you can expect a much milder temperature hanging out on the bridge.
Very cool. I was looking at your website and I see that you guys are connected to the Highline Network in New York in some capacity. That is a very cool space I've been to. What's the relationship there and what inspiration are you taking from that?
Yeah, that's awesome that you have been there and have seen it. You know, you never know how many people, especially around here. New York is obviously it's a haul away from Kansas City, but it is, you know, it's this country's mecca. It's what everyone, when they think of America, they think of New York City. So to have, you know, a tie-in to that is very validating. Yeah, the High Line, for people that don't know, is an elevated rail line in Manhattan. They're now all subways. So the old elevated rail lines were being torn down, but a group of social entrepreneurs came by and said, we can't let this go to waste. We need to make use of this old unused rail line. So they put a green space on top with a walking trail, park space, and it now sees over 7 million people a year. It is the most groundbreaking industrial renewal project in North America, maybe in the world. It's a super cool space. If you ever get the chance to go, it is awesome. And we fit into that because we are also industrial reuse. We are taking an old piece of infrastructure that's no longer being used and transforming it into something new. So the Highline Network caught wind of that. They reached out years ago and invited us to be members of the Highline Network, which is a group of industrial reuse projects in North America. And actually, in April, Alan Van Capel, he's the executive director of the Highline in New York City. He flew down here to Kansas City for a couple days just to take a tour of this bridge. He came down, he saw it. We threw a little event for him. He spoke. He said, this is the most important infrastructure renewal project in North America right now. And he was incredibly excited, which, like I said, is just so validating to have someone that's done this at a high level, that has seen the social impacts of reusing old infrastructure, come down here and tell us, hey, this is a really good idea. This is something that's going to work. And we're almost there. We're 80% of the way done. And we hope to see maybe not 7 million people a year right out of the gate, but 500,000, 1 million people every year to come experience our bridge like they experienced the Highline too.
Yeah, very cool. So speaking of, like industrial repurposing, are you guys using any of the original materials from the bridge, or like is the design inspired by the original bridge? Like how much relationship is there between the Ultimate Rock Island Bridge and the bridge that was there previously?
Yeah, so the bridge is the foundation. The bridge, the reason why we were able to execute this project is because of the bridge that it's on. It was built 120 years ago for rail, which means it was built like a tank. Railroad bridges, for anyone that doesn't know how much a train weighs, it is a lot. These bridges are built to carry large capacities. They're built sturdy and they're built to last. That's the thing. You see bridges around Kansas City, like the Buck O'Neill Bridge, that, a very important bridge to the city that had to be blown up. A lot of people were sad to see it go and asked us why we didn't do this with a bridge like that. It's because car bridges are salted every winter. You have to go out, you have to salt for ice, and that salt kills the steel and kills the structural integrity of the bridge over time. Railroad bridges are never salted. You don't have to salt train tracks. The train's not sliding off because of ice. So the steel that's out there has been preserved by a micro layer of rust. It's protected from the elements, and it was almost perfectly structurally sound when we came onto this project. It only took about $500,000 worth of, different maintenance to get it ready to build on. If we would have tried this with a road bridge, it would have been $60 million just to repair it, to get ready. So it was the bridge is the most important feature. It gave us a phenomenal foundation to build upon, and we're not hiding it. We're not painting the bridge. We're not, even graffiti on there that's not obscene. We are going to leave. We do not want to cover this thing up. We want to show it off. We just built a modern structure around it to help us show it off a little bit. So we definitely want to tell that story. We want to have, different pictures and signage, especially on the trails next to us, to tell people how cool this bridge is, how cool it always has been, its original purpose, what it was for. We want to make sure we show all of that off. So obviously we've used the whole bridge, and then any of the other steel we have treated just as this bridge's steel was treated. So we've covered it with a special coating so that it will rust. As someone who's not an engineer, I always think rust is bad. In this case, rust is very good. So any new steel that we put on is going to rust the same way and be protected, so this thing can be standing for another 120 years or however long.
That is so cool. I had no idea that much of the original structure was still being used. That is big. So what a time for this project to be happening, as the current riverfront area is going to be developed, and we're going to have the green space over 670, and so much of downtown is becoming this walkable, area. How much collaboration is there between the various development projects that are happening? And how does it feel to be a part of this like new era of Kansas City that we're seeing?
Yeah. It's amazing. We always like to say that we're doing something one of a kind, but we are definitely getting to springboard off of a lot of other great minds as well. This is not just us. Kansas City is full of people that are excited to progress. They're excited to create new things. You look at what the Longs and the current ownership team have done over and by the river. They are also same as our mission, trying to show off the rivers in this city a little bit more. So that's been an awesome project to watch and to see come to fruition, especially with such a great inaugural season as well. I mean, they're playing phenomenally. But then also the different projects downtown are really fun to see and are definitely going to contribute to our success. There's not a whole lot of planning that I've been a part of, in between the different projects. It's just we caught a great time to be in this city. This is the best time to be here. We've got the World Cup coming in 2 years, which is really putting a creative deadline on everybody. Anyone with a great idea is now saying it's no longer, oh, this would be cool. It's, oh, this is going to be cool, and we better do it before the World Cup comes, and the whole world is taking a look at our city. So we just get to ride that wave with the rest of them, and are really excited to get to be a part of that and show off what we have to the entire world here in just a couple years.
So awesome. It's so funny because I've lived in the Kansas City Metro my entire life, basically, and I've never thought of us as a river town. I guess people would be like, oh yeah, I guess we do have rivers, but most river cities is like that is their identifier. And now all of a sudden we're like orienting ourselves around the river. It's very cool to see it happening.
Yeah, it's kind of taken a turn of the tides because the rivers historically were seen as a bad area. The rivers, if you're familiar with the Quality Hill neighborhood here in town, I learned it's called Quality Hill because people lived by the river that were poor and needed the river for life support. And once they made enough money, they could move up on the top of the hill and live a higher quality of life. We are trying to bring people back to show people, that the rivers are why Kansas City got its start, is because we were along these major rivers. We need to show them off. You look at a city like Austin, Texas, that has wrapped its arm around its rivers. Same thing with like Oklahoma City as well. People are coming back to the rivers. They're using them. The Kansas River that this bridge sits over is very easygoing. It's great for water recreation. It's not a commercial navigable waterway. There's not big barge traffic, so it's not dangerous to get on a kayak and get out there and get active. Kids can go out on a kayak or a paddleboard and get introduced to water sports. It's really a perfect river for all of this development. And yeah, I mean, this city is long overdue to come back to the rivers. There's Edgar Galicia. He heads the Central Avenue Betterment Association in KCK. He said, we've abandoned our rivers and it's time to come back to the rivers. And that's what we're riding on. We're hoping to bring the attention back down so that people can see them, get active with them, and it'll help clean them up and make them better in the long run.
Love it. Love it. Okay, last two questions I have for you. I ask everyone that comes on the show. First one is, what is a great meal that you've had out and about in Kansas City recently?
Okay, that's a great question, especially as someone that's come here from St. Louis. I know that my favorite thing about this city is it has so many great locally owned restaurants. So I try to try as many of them as I can. I gotta say, the pad thai at Lulu's Crossroads location is very close to the bridge. We have had quite a few business meetings with some pad thai from Lulu's at them. You cannot go wrong with anything on their menu.
Mm-hmm. Good choice. Good choice. But last question for you is, where can people find more information about the bridge, about what you guys are doing, website, social media, all that good stuff?
Yeah, the best way to get an all-encompassing view is our website, rockislandkc.com. You'll get updates. You can sign up for our newsletter. We only send out max one a month. Sometimes we don't send them out. We're not going to bombard you with emails. We only give you updates when we got updates to give. So sign up for our newsletter. You can get updates on the project. Whenever we do open up public tours, you'll get the chance to sign up for those as well. And then on our socials too, I believe we're Rock Island KC on Instagram and Facebook, we've just brought on a great marketing director to the team. She has been working hard to make sure that our socials are updated with new and fun and engaging content. So you're going to start to see a lot of fun posts on there as well, keeping you up to date as we move closer to opening.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, Jake, thank you so much for being here today and giving us the scoop on this. I cannot wait to go hang out over the river very soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and we can't wait to see you.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.